Hello, everybody. It is I, Samlaw. Yeah, that's a good enough introduction, I think. Now, a few mistakes from the last video, and that is that a vlog is also a video blog, but it can also be a journal, so there is that, and people usually have generally many different genres that they stick to when they start one, so yeah. But moving on, today I would like to talk about the types of DM, specifically, well, I wouldn't say specifically, but the types of DM and what kind of DM, I should say, I am. Now, there are many tips out there for DMs, how to play the game, how to run the game, what to read, how to follow throughs, how to set up house rules, and they have their general different types of, shall we say, what they like to run the game. Some would like things more action-packed, some are more story-driven, some blend the two together, some are absolutely horrible, and everybody's at least run into one or two or five of them throughout their lifetime. Not that I believe I've ever had the chance of running into more than one or two. I've been lucky that way, but then again, I haven't been in the game as long as some others have, or rather, I have been in very select games, I should say, instead. So a little bit about my experience. I started off playing Exalted. That was my game when I was like a teenager and then into adulthood. My game was Exalted. It was about Solars, it was about Lunars, it was about Dragon-Blooded, it was about essentially these people who were given powers by the gods in order to overthrow the Primordials. Now, the reason why the gods gave them the powers was because they were put under a Geas, or is it Gaius, by, or Geese. No, not Geese, Geas. It's because it's kind of like Code Geass. Anyways, they were put under a Geas by the Primordial, saying, by the way, you can't attack us, you cannot harm us, you can't do anything to us. So they're like, okay, well, we need to find a loophole, and the loophole was talking to the two nicer primordials, Autochthon and Gaia, and Autochthon developed the shards, and Gaia fastened the 5 elemental dragons and caused her warriors to come from the 5 elemental dragons, which is why they are called the Dragon-Blooded. Not that they actually look like dragons. So that's where I played most of my game. It's a high-powered game based more on story than it was on fighting, and this was online because I didn't really have anyone outside of the online Exalted chat sites to run the game, and the game was run by points, and it was very story driven. You had these things called stunts, and the more elaborate your stunt was, the more amount of stunt dice you got. Now, this was also done by the same people who did Vampire the Masquerade, Changelings, the something or other, White Wolf, essentially. It was done by White Wolf. And it was a very different game from all their other kind of darker game, their World of Darkness games. And Scion, it was like their attempt, I suppose, at a modern day Exalted. But that is getting off the point. The point I'm trying to get across is how that affected me as a so-called DM, or an Exalted term, we called them STs, which stands for storytellers. Now, for those of you who do not understand the terminologies, maybe, there are 3 that I know of: possibly more, but these are the three most common: ST, Storyteller; GM, Game Master; and DM, Dungeon Master. Those are the most commonly used ones, depending on what games you're playing. Now, for me, I am a person who, I want the story. I want the characters to have a backstory. There are some, and I've met them, I've gotten annoyed with them. There are some DMs who do not require backstory. Some DMs will require a backstory, but they won't be terribly good at running those backstories. I've met one of those as well. And then one who will just screw with your backstory and not care one way or the other. So while they wanted one, it was mostly just to screw with you. I've met one of those too. So I am, I guess, more on the Chris Person, Matt Mercer, Matt Colville, any of the DMs or storytellers, GMs, whoever you see online running games for the players. I tend to fall into their category where they typically prefer you to have a backstory, and so that they can actually use character development and other such things as you progress through the game. Now, there are the main point of what I wanted to get, now that that's over, the main point that I wanted to get to was how to set up the game. Now, some DMs will spend hours, days even, setting up the plot line, setting up the world, setting up the maps, setting up like even 3D maps. Chris Perkins, Matt Mercer, and a bunch of others are well known to build 3D maps for when they're about to fight a battle, and which usually involves a boss or harder enemies. Typically more when there's a boss involved. I'm not so great at the map making, but I'm more, once again, the person who prefers stories, and I do try and make maps. Not the point. Getting to the point. So, these DMs, they'll spend hours upon hours upon hours building characters, and there are many tips as to how you should build your world, or how you should write down notes, or how many notes you should write down, and what you should have down, where you should have it down. And that's fine for some DMs, for like, I guess some might consider them more hardcore, or maybe these are simply the people who do not have or do not trust, rather, their memory to be able to hold all the information that they're gathering. I am more of a bullet point person. I have an idea. I know what I want my world to look like. I know what I want my enemies to be. I know what I want my rulers to be. I know what races I want to be. And this is something that every DM will tell you to do, and that is to write stuff down. Because if you don't write stuff down, you're going to not be very good at things. Now, my method is the most laziest, but also the most difficult, because it is the easiest to backfire on you. Because you're just relying on bullet points and names, it is incredibly easy for something to backfire. And the reason why I do it is because it's easy. I know the lore I want to use. I know the folklore, the real life folklore I want to use. I know where I want to use it. I know where I want to send the players. And the reason why I'm not revealing anything is because my players are likely going to, or some of them are likely going to end up watching and going, what can I glean? And you can glean absolutely nothing. I am spoiling diddly squat. So, to those guys, nice try. But moving on. So with the bullet points and all of that, I put those down because it allows more improv. It allows you to have more flexibility, I think. It is incredibly lazy, do not get me wrong. It is one of the most laziest methods one can do, but that does not mean that it is easy. Because if you don't know how to do it well, you're not going to look very good at doing things. So how the bullet points work is I have the setting, I have the idea, I know where I want to send them. And then as they go on and they do things, I warp the world around them in comparison to what they are doing. Aside from like the things that I've absolutely set in stone. So that way when they move along, I try and shape the world along with them, using great improvisation skills. And this is required by almost every good DM, is if you don't know how to improvise, you're going to end up in trouble. No matter whether you put in a lot of work or whether you've put in very little work, a good DM will always have to improvise because players are notorious for going off track. And because they are notorious for going off track, all those things that you planned, you're like, well, and you kind of have to toss them out and go with what the players are and just improv the rest of the way through as if you know what you're doing. And some do know what they're doing, others not so much. And that is the biggest reason why I use bullet points, is because I enjoy improving, I enjoy creating the world as we go along, plus I can throw in some little neat tidbits that weren't in the game before. Like, if they say a random comment, like in the last game, not the last game, the 2 sessions ago, one of the players commented on, upon seeing spider webs and hearing a spider-like voice, they're like, is this Muffet from Undertale? And I rolled the dice and I was like, yes, this is Muffet from Undertale, but different name. I named her Annie, but I used the same character, if that makes sense, because, you know, they made the comment. I'm like, you know what? This will be fun. Let's do this. That's the type of DM I am. Not only that, there is the thing of rewarding your players. Some DMs will try and kind of act in a vengeance towards their player. I don't agree with that, but that is, once again, what many other DMs have referred to as dick DMs. So there is that. I'm the type of person who I try to reward my players fairly once they've completed what I think could have been a very difficult task. And so, allow me to explain. You've set up, say you're a DM, and you've set up a difficult enemy, and you roll for that enemy poorly all night. You've rolled other things very well, maybe even other enemies you've rolled very well, but that's not the main enemy you wanted to focus. Those were like maybe henchmen or bandits or, like, you know, the lesser beings, or you wanted to set the ambience and you rolled magnificently for that. And then it comes to facing the big bad, and this has happened to me twice or 3 times now, and I don't know if my dice are cursed because of this or if I need to use new dice. It doesn't matter, because even though I rolled poorly, I still rewarded them based on what the reward for the quest was. Some DMs will get mad at what has happened and will be like, well, I'm not going to reward you guys. Instead, I'm going to punish you in some way, shape, or form, even though it wasn't the player's fault in the slightest. And that is kind of if you run across one of those DMs or storytellers or GMs, whatever, it would be best to just leave that game, because they typically want things to go their way. And while it is annoying, and every storyteller, DM, whatever, will tell you that yes, it does get annoying when your plans don't go as expected, but if the players figure it out, go through it, solve it, do what they're supposed to do in the quest, and they don't die, even though you may have sucked, then great. Absolutely fantastic. Don't punish them for it. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, this is the other thing that I wanted to bring across. I heard a few DMs, I can't remember who they were, but they said that typically one DM cannot run a large game, and at some point they're going to have to cut it off. Otherwise, it'll be too big and it'll get too much of a hassle. And this is once again where I think improv comes into play. And that's also where I think the DM has three choices. The first choice obviously is like, nope, this many players, no more, next time maybe. The second option is, okay, split the party, or split the, say you have 8 or 10 people, you split the group so that 5 on one side, 5 on the other, and they go and do separate quests, and you run those quests at 2 different times. Your workload may increase by doing this, but, you'll be running it in the same world, you'll be having the same idea as to what's going on. Especially if you're doing a homebrew game. I'm one of those people who enjoys doing homebrew games. I enjoy setting up my own worlds. I've never really run a module before, and I find it a little awkward to run modules because I feel them a little bit limiting, if that makes sense. So the idea is to split them up, send them off onto different quests. At least that's what I would do, is send them off to different quests, and then they rejoin at some point, talk about what they've experienced, what they found, talk it out with each other, try and place in some clues, and then they'd go off and do some other quests. So that's option 2. Option 3 is essentially having them all in one party. And what you do then is you increase the enemies, you increase the difficulty, you increase the challenge, and you increase the puzzles and whatever else you may have had going. So say you're only going to send one difficulty 6 after a level of 3 group, that the group might have been like 4 to 6, and you're sending a difficulty 6 after them with maybe some minions. And if they have 10 people in that party, well then you increase that difficulty of 6 to maybe a difficulty of 7, or have 2 difficulty of 6 and a bunch of minions that they have to fight off in an epic battle. These are options. But yeah, I just wanted to share some of my knowledge, because I got bothered by some of the things people were saying. I'm like, no, wait, there are other ways to do this, but everybody is cut from a different cloth, so everybody's going to do things differently, and not everything they do is going to run well. That's about it that I wanted to talk about for DMs. I'll have some other tips for another time, and of course I wasn't talking about Exalted in this session, like in this case. I was talking more D&D, if that wasn't obvious. But yeah, that has been my experience. I have ended up as being the DM because I had this world I wanted to run, and I thought it was fun. And I even have another idea after this campaign that I'll want to do that I find kind of fun, but that'll be probably a year or so in the future. The one thing, however, is that even though DMs enjoy DMing, and this is the last thing I want to talk about DMs, remember, they too like being a player. they too like sitting back and just deciding things under another DM. They too like creating characters and playing under another DM. It's not like, oh no, I'm never going to play unless I'm DM. No, they both play and they run the story because they have a story they want to run, but they also want to experience somebody else's story. And lastly, if you have not read the books, at least the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide, don't even think about being a DM. Secondly, if you both have not read the basic rules and the Dungeon Master's Guide and the types of monsters that a person can face, even though that's kind of mandatory, but those are the three things that you'll want to have, is like the DM's Guide, the Player's Handbook, and the Monster Manual. If you don't have these three, and if you don't know how to run lore, if you don't know how to run any of these, if you don't know the dice mechanics rules or whatever, and you're new to the game, and my players watching this will know exactly who I'm talking about, because it made me die a little inside when he's like, I know absolutely nothing about this game, but I'm going to run one, and just like part of me broke. Because I was like, no, please no. So, just don't. Don't. Play the game, learn how the game works, learn the rules, and then once you've been playing for a while, yeah, then I'd say try your hand at running a game. But other than that, that's all I've got for this episode. I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.